and first 10-15 minutes I will finish my talk. You ask all your doubts and I will clear them one by one. Radioactive iodine in thyroid cancer. Let's go by one. Iodine. See, we have iodine atomic number and mass number. The atomic number is number of protons, and the mass number is the number of protons and neutrons together. Iodine is a halogen. A halogen, it's having one electron less than needed for the stable electronic configuration. Iodine is needed for thyroid hormone synthesis, and iodine is trapped actively by sodium iodide symporter NIS. This NIS is stimulated by the NIS is stimulated by thyroid stimulating hormone. NIS converts NIS transports iodine against concentration gradient, and iodine is used in the synthesis of triiodothyronine and T3 and T4 hormones. First, it is iodine negative is converted into iodine positive. This is called as organification. That iodine negative is converted into iodine positive by an enzyme called as thyroid peroxidase. You can see here TPO. TPO converts iodine negative into iodine positive. Oxidization. Iodine, though it is electron seeker, it is oxidized and stimulated to give an electron, that is, it becomes iodine positive, and that iodine positive gets incorporated in the thyroglobulin, and which gets fragmented to form T4 and T3, and these three thyroid hormones are of very great importance. The management of thyroid cancer. Most of you think that patient is diagnosed to have carcinoma thyroid. Should I post for hemithyroidectomy? Some people, some who are on the slightly less aggressive side, think for hemithyroidectomy. Those who are more aggressive, they'll try for total thyroidectomy plus central compartment neck dissection. One size doesn't fit all. You should be very choosy. Hemithyroidectomy is advantages of hemithyroidectomy are no need of hormone replacement, useful for T1 and T2 lesions. Disadvantages are follow-up becomes difficult. It is observer dependent ultrasound, and thyroglobulin is not reliable. If you do a total thyroidectomy, multicentricity answered. See, 15 to 20% of papillary thyroid cancers and follicular thyroid cancers are multicentric, and multicentricity is answered. Needed in more than T3 lesions, facilitates radioiodine treatment. Sorry, it has, but the disadvantage is you need continuous hormone suppression and supplementation. Total thyroidectomy plus central compartment neck dissection achieves complete removal of functioning thyroid tissue, targets occult metastasis. Disadvantages are high risk of recurrent laryngeal nerve palsy and permanent hypoparathyroidism. Total thyroidectomy plus CCND plus FND useful in achieving complete response, useful in N1B disease, no disadvantage when indicated, especially when you have a nodal disease. When the presentation is nodal mass, then you should go for total thyroidectomy, central compartment neck dissection plus FND. And always, before any surgery for thyroid cancer, you check whether there is vocal cord fixation and its relation to other critical structures. Once it is operated, should I directly go, sir, patient of well-differentiated carcinoma, shall I post for radioiodine therapy? No. Remember 5S, 5 R's, risk stratification, residual tissue estimation, recombinant ESH or hormone withdrawal. As always, I am saying the iodine will be effective only if it is properly in a prepared state. That is, whether the patient is endogenously hypothyroid by withholding hormone supplementation for 30 days or by giving a recombinant TSH. Renal function test. This is not done by many, but it should be done because there is dose modification. Rule out iodine pool saturation. Excuse me. The iodine pool saturation means in those patients who are on amiodarone or who received recent contrast, the normal iodine, stable iodine, stable iodine competes with radioactive iodine. That's why you should rule out iodine pool saturation. That is by urinary iodine test, but it is not available in India. or it is available. I don't say it is not available. It is available in only few centers in India. That's why urinary iodine may not be always possible. At that time, you should always take a proper history whether the patient is on amiodarone or iodine containing drug. Ask the patient to be not eating those iodine containing seafoods and uh, thyroid and liver of in non-vegetarian items. So now the first thing, risk stratification. Risk stratification. See, it is high risk, intermediate, and low risk. No low risk is intrathyroidal unifocal lesion, follicular thyroid cancer, multifocal but micro. That is, all of them are less than 1 centimeter. I am saying the in the brackets are the incidence of recurrence as the risk increases. Intrathyroidal 2 to 4 centimeter papillary thyroid cancer, N1 less than 5 nodes, and N1 all tumor foci is less than 2 mm. That is low risk. In the lymph nodes also, if the liver lymph nodes are positive, but the tumor deposit in the lymph nodes is less than 2 mm, then only you call it as low risk. And if it is more than 5 lymph nodes, or BRAF mutated, intrathyroidal, and if it is multifocal and T3 with minimal extrathyroidal extension, it becomes intermediate. If the nodal size is greater than 3 centimeter, TERT mutation is present, gross extrathyroidal extension is present, extracapsular extension is present, it becomes high risk. In low risk, in low risk thyroid cancer, iodine can be avoided. In intermediate risk, as of now, we are giving radioiodine. In low risk after thyroidectomy, and especially if the surgery is complete, there is no residual thyroid, then we can subject the patient to active hormone suppression plus active surveillance. Please remember hormone suppression with an estimated target of TSH of 0.5 to 2. If it is intermediate risk, plus or minus radioiodine, preferably radioiodine, you give radioiodine, followed by hormone suppression with TSH target of 0.1 to 0.5. If it is high risk, definitely radioiodine with TSH suppression of hormone suppression with TSH target undetectable. TSH should not be detectable and TSH less than 0.1. So, which isotope of iodine should be there? You have iodine 123 to actually the other one I forgot. It is a copied slide. Iodine 132 is also there, which was commonly used. So we, for diagnostic purpose, we use gamma emitters like iodine 123, positron emitters like iodine 124, electron capture and positron emitter. Iodine 125 again, it decays by electron capture. It also can be used for low grade therapy. Iodine 127 is the one which we regularly eat. It is fortified. Salt is fortified with iodine 127. Iodine 129 is, though it is a beta emitter, it cannot be used because of the very long half life. And iodine 131 and iodine 135 can be used, but iodine 135 has a very short half-life and is have the energy of the beta and the gamma is not correct proper. So we use iodine 131 for therapy, iodine 123 or iodine 124 for diagnostic scans. For iodine 124, if you have a PET machine and cyclotron producing iodine 124 is available. Iodine 123, if you have a gamma machine and you have availability of iodine 123. Iodine 123, because you can give in a larger quantities, you can give do SPECT, and it has a half-life of 13 hours and 123 keV photons. So it is very good for diagnostic purpose. Iodine 131 is better for therapeutic purpose. Because of non-availability of iodine 123 and iodine 124, for estimating post-op residue, we are still using iodine 131 only, though it is not the ideal for diagnostic purpose. For therapeutic purpose, iodine 131. For diagnostic purpose, iodine 123. If it is gamma camera, iodine 124, it is PET because of non-availability. Now, once you have risk stratified and the patient is needed for therapy, the patient should be kept at least 2 hours and if possible 1 day in the hospital. The patient should be fasting for 2 hours. In the case of cancer treatment, the patient should be hospitalized for several days. This is a wrong notion. It depends on the risk and the dose. In all cases, the dose rate from the patient should be down to an acceptable limit. That is important. The acceptable limit in India is at 1 meter distance. Is calculating at 1 meter distance. 2.5 mR per hour was the previously acceptable. Now it is 5 mr per this thing. Safe administration. The patient should be administered safe so that there is no radioactive iodine spillage, because iodine vaporizes. It is a harm for both technician, doctor, and other people. So we should see that there will not be any spillage of iodine. That is the most important thing. And now you have capsules dispensing. You should have protective clothing, lead shields, and a cube. Keep the foil in the fume hood. If you are starting your own oncology center, you should buy a fume hood with a negative pressure, so that the iodine will, if even if it is slight amount of it split and vaporizes, it is sucked into those the fume hood, and due to negative pressure, and it is diluted. It is absorbed on the charcoal, and if anything is removed, it is diluted and released. Handle the oil with forceps or similar long-handled instrument. Cover the oil with lead after use, because the iodine is, though it is a beta emitter, it also emits gamma rays, which are used for post-therapy localization. That's why, because it emits 364 and 256 keV gamma rays, the vial should be closed after with lead. Check the activity, and everything should be recorded. Even if you have to transport from one area to other area, you should use a radioactive container, and make sure the warning sign is on the container together with patient name, activity, and date. Misadministration. That means if you have a thyrotoxicosis patient, you have a thyroid cancer patient, by both are named Rangaya or Ramu or whatever it is, and you administer the thyroid cancer dose to the patient, and to thyrotoxicosis patient, you're landing up yourself in a major radiation emergency. That's why it should always, the container should be always labeled by name, activity, and date. Travel by the most direct route, avoiding more heavily occupied areas, so that there is no current. It is better you have your what do you say? Once you open the vial, once you open the consignment, it is better you have your radio pharmacy adjacent to the wards itself. See, some patients who receive very low amount, up to 29 millicurie, can be treated in outpatient. No eating and drinking during the first hour of treatment. That is a usual guideline. Because if he vomits, the iodine can cause nausea and vomit. If he vomits, it causes lot area of spillage, and that's why no eating and drinking during first hour. Actually, we make the patient, even if we are treating outpatient, we make them sit in the department for 4 hours, so that they will not vomit and contaminate. During the following 2 days, you should drink more water than usual. That is because the radioiodine 70% gets excreted in the urine. That's why there will be a delay time, which I will come and which I will talk in the next slides. Use only a what do you say, your western commode, and flush to 2 to 3 times. Keep the toilet and the floor clean. Wash your hands frequently and take shower every day, because iodine is excreted in the sweat also. That I'll go and I'll show you in the next slides. Avoid close contacts, especially with pregnant women and small children. Avoid solid waste, and in case of emergency, contact the nuclear medicine department. Shall the patient be hospitalized? Can the patient leave any restrictions? I already said about the restrictions. All the patients need not be hospitalized, but those receiving more than 30 millicurie need to be hospitalized. All the patients need not be hospitalized, but those patients receiving more than 29 millicurie, it's better to be hospitalized. Those receiving 10 millicurie or 15 millicurie for thyroid toxicosis need not be hospitalized, but those receiving therapeutic doses for thyroid cancer, especially more than 30 millicurie, should be hospitalized. Hospitalized patient, separate room with toilet and shower. Patient instructions, both verbal and written, in their language. English instructions will not work. You have to have Telugu, Hindi, Urdu, Tamil, Malayalam, whichever language it is, the patient written instructions, all verbal instructions. We counsel the patient for nearly 30 minutes, and local rules for nursing the patient, local rules for visitors. Visitors are only dropping the food on the table and coming back. They can only contact through the phone. Local rules for decontamination, that your radiation safety officer, if you are the radiation safety officer, you should know. Otherwise, the radiation safety officer will say. Local rules for emergency situations, that the nuclear medicine physician will look. Room for iodine ward. There will be, the toilet should be attached. There should be a lid. This thing. There should be a multiple lead shields but we have only one shield which protects us, and extra door should be always closed. Warning sign should be there outside. The visitors are not allowed to enter into the hospital. Only one patient in the room. This is the isolation ward. You can see a lead shield in the patient and the attached toilet, preferably a western commode. Areas are covered with plastic backed absorbent materials because iodine vaporizes and it spills also and it spreads also. It should be, yeah, absorbent material should be available so that if there is any contamination or patient vomits, you put the absorbent paper and deal it. And always from outside in. The cleaning should be from outside in, not from inside out, to prevent further spillage. And see, 70% of iodine gets excreted in the urine. So if you release this patient's urine into the normal sewage, that iodine enters into the biological chain. If you read, if you properly, those who know Chernobyl accident, you know how the Chernobyl previously at that time USSR, Soviet Union was under a complete communist regime. Nobody, they did not reveal it. But how did they came to know? They came to know because those on the other side of the Chernobyl, that river, and they were getting thyroid cancers. When they estimated, they found that the iodine, there is radiation exposure is high because the iodine enters the biological chain. Suppose it's sewage, and that sewage cultivates any grass or anything. The grass is eaten by cow. The cow that contains iodine enters into the cow, and that cow secretes into the milk, and the milk is taken by the kids. So the iodine enters biological chain. That's why delay tank is mandatory, at least in crowded in countries like India, where otherwise dilute and disperse. There are only three modes of decay of radioactive iodine. One is concentrate and contain, means if you have a long lived radionuclide, so what you do, you keep it in a, you see where it is, you see that slow small volumes, you keep it in a bucket surrounded by completely by lead with thickness that is which decreases the intensity of the radiation to background radiation, and then store it, that is concentrate and contain. Next, dilute and disperse. You dilute with so much of fluid. Suppose 1 liter of urine containing so much of iodine, dilute it with 1,000 liters of normal water or regular sewage, so that the amount per ml concentration of iodine falls. But it is not acceptable in highly populated countries like India. And the third thing is uh, store and decay. That is what we are doing. That is why it is called delay tank or decay tank. The two patients are there. Per at least 3,000 liters per patient, we construct a delay tank, and the delay tank is constructed. So once we block this, and the total tank one gets filled. So once the tank one gets filled, when we block this and allow the sewage to pass it to second tank. This tank, when it is when till the second tank accumulates, the iodine in this, the iodine is having a half life of 8 days. Suppose this is having the storage is for 80 days, then it will decay. Then we can check the radiation content in that by a sampling thing, and then we release it into the sewage. If you haven't understood, any of you, again I'll explain, no problem. The patients are kept in B1 is bed 1, B2 is bed 2. These two patients, their urine there is connected to the tank, and this is called as delay tank, the sewage tank. So once it fills up, then you close the knob here, and this, you open the knob to the second delay tank, and the second one will keep on filling. By the time the radioactivity of iodine will fall down, and by 80 days it will be equal to the background, then you open it into sewage, and the second one is closed for decay, and the first one is allowed to fill. See, as far as possible, we should avoid solid waste. Sensitive detector at sanitary landfills and solid waste transfer and processing sites have identified contaminated articles from nuclear medicine patients. Do not use paper plates or disposable cups or flatware. Use regular dishes, glasses, and utensils. Wash them in the sink. Tissues and paper napkins should go into the toilet, not in the garbage. Food residues should be avoided during the first week. That's why we ask them to take curd rice, and so that there will be nothing, no wastage left. Articles contaminated with body fluids cannot be washed clean or disposed of in the toilet, should be stored for decay. See, iodine is why we are worried so much about iodine is, if you have 1000 megabecquerel, that is almost 30 millicurie, you saliva also secretes, perspiration also secretes. Actually, if you see, when we had no AC in one of our iodine rooms, the iodine rooms are made of concrete, so they will perspire so much. We used to get the hot skull sign. That means entire skull. Where they used to get so much of iodine used to get. So that's unnecessarily increasing the toxicity. That's why we started providing air conditions to all the iodine ward patients. Breathing also, but the content is very less. And urine, it should be, the concentration is high. So that's why, and the toilet is another thing. So the radioactive feces, urine should be disposed of via the toilet. The contaminated clothing, linen, food items which cannot go into the toilet should be stored in a separate plastic bag labeled radioactive and should be removed daily to the designated radioactive waste storage facility. We have a separate waste storage facility. Cutlery and dishes should be washed in the patient's room and reused by the patient and ask the patient to wash. So we should keep the danger size and on outpatient chart also. The contraindication for radioiodine therapy, even if the patient is high risk, are intermediate and high risk, are pregnancy, lactation, unstimulated state. That is, when the patient is not with on a stimulated state and iodine suppleted state. Iodine suppleted state means when the patient is taking a lot of iodine containing diet like I said seafood and all, or the patient is using amiodarone where the stable iodine competes with the uh, radioactive iodine, so that the efficacy of the radioactive will be very minimal. And that's why in iodine suppleted state, you should not give radioiodine. Pregnancy, you should avoid because the placenta, the radioactive iodine crosses placenta. Lactation, you should stop lactation, and after 1 month after stopping lactation only, you should give radioiodine. Radioiodine easily crosses the placenta, and therapeutic doses can pose significant problems for the fetus, particularly permanent hypothyroidism. Radioiodine therapy, as a rule, a pregnant woman should not be treated with a radioactive substance unless the therapy is required to save her life. In that extremely rare event, the potential absorbed dose and risk to the fetus should be estimated and conveyed to the patient. Sometimes we terminate the pregnancy also. It is better not to continue because tomorrow, if everything goes good, everyone will be happy. But if the patient is having lifelong mental retardation, you will also feel guilty, and the parents also will feel guilty, and they will be helpless. So menstrual history is often non-adequate, even though sometimes we do pregnancy test, not sometimes, every time we do a urine pregnancy test. Sometimes 2 days before the if they had coitus 2 days before the taking radioiodine, then they come up with pregnancy. We asked to terminate because though there is a, if you go by Hall, all or none phenomenon in the first 10 days after conception, but still we don't take any chances. In spite of all precautions, it still happens that pregnant women are treated either because of false histories or because the pregnancy is in such a stage that pregnancy test is not yet positive. ICR is recommended that women should not become pregnant until the International Commission for Radiation Protection potential fetal dose from remaining radionuclides is less than 1 milligram. So we have to stop breastfeeding. For mothers in lactation, discontinuation of nursing be recommended until the radiopharmacy is no longer secreted in the amount estimated to give an unacceptable effective dose. Simple. That is, breastfeeding should be stopped completely if you want to give iodine. And even if you stop and give within 1 week, there will be a lot of radiation to the breast. So it is better after wait for 1 month, then withhold thyroxine, then only you and then after 1 month, then only. So it will be minimum of stopping of breastfeeding and giving radioiodine. It is preferably 2 months. Otherwise, you will be causing second malignancy. Do no harm is our first motto. By giving to pregnant women, you are causing harm to the fetus. By giving to a lactating mother, you are again causing harm to the infant. By not taking proper precaution about lactation, you may pose the patient to risk of breast cancer. The radionuclide should be stored in a controlled area, and according to national regulations and local rules that we take care, the radiation safety officer will take care of a designated area. The radiation should be stored in lead container. I am always saying iodine is not only volatile, but it also emits gamma rays, which are useful for scanning purpose and preferably in a fridge. But it is very difficult to reach an acceptable external radiation dose. That is, once we keep it in lead, the radiation dose decreases. The radiation dose, it is inversely proportional time, distance, and shielding. The lesser the time you expose to iodine is good. The more the distance you maintain from iodine is good. And the shielding, it is especially lead, you should keep the lead. But it doesn't mean you should be cautious, but you should not be afraid. What are the side effects of radioiodine? Nothing comes without a side effect. There are radioiodine has side effect. If somebody says there are no side effect, I don't accept. All are worried about oligospermia. See, we have treated around thousands of cases. The oligospermia, if unless you are treating more than 3 to 4 times of 4 times, if you radio more than 500 millicurie, the oligospermia is what do you call uh, transient. No need of IUS, that is intrauterine insemination, classical IVF or IVF with ICSI. Nothing is needed. You wait, ask the patient to wait for 6 months to 1 year. There is a transient oligospermia. Here is because if the patient doesn't take hydration properly, see the salivary glands also concentrate lot of radioiodine. That's why in saliva also there is radioiodine. If the salivary glands are not functioning properly, there will the patient is prone for cases. As head and neck oncologist will be there and radiation oncologist will be there. Many dry mouth is a factor causing caries. That's why caries is one of the side effects which we monitor, and xerostomia because the salivary glands at higher doses xerostomia, and it is permanent, which is one of the dangerous thing. And I have made a cartoon. My high dose radioiodine causes nasolacrimal duct obstruction. Though it is underreported, but it is more common. I hate tears in a poonch लो. This is a famous dialogue. मैं कहाँ रो रही हूँ? आयोडीन ने मेरा NLD duct block कर दिया. Surgical should be considered for nasolacrimal duct obstruction. Rare but dangerous. So AML can happen. These days it is over-reported. We haven't seen these many days. We are not seeing, but it is projected as one of the side effects of radioiodine, which I do not uh, uh, accept based on the eminence that is based on 12 to 14 years of treating thyroid cancer patients. But evidence is slightly there are few cases of AML reported in thyroid cancer who are treated with radioiodine. But at present, the relative risk we are evaluate we are waiting for the papers to see what is the relative risk. Neither American Thyroid Association also says it as a major side effect. And once we give thyroid, once surgery is done, then radioiodine is given. How do you follow up? Follow up for those who underwent lobectomy, TG should be less than 30, and what do you say, negative imaging, that is ultrasound imaging for lobectomy patients, and ultrasound should not have any this thing. I'll show you one. Yeah, here it is. That is for lobectomy patient, ultrasound should be normal, no lymphadenopathy, no clinical signs. And whereas for the total thyroidectomy patients and total thyroidectomy plus central compartment dissection, excellent response means non-stimulated, excellent response. When do you say it is excellent response? Is when there is undetectable TG or stimulated TG less than 1, unstimulated TG less than 1, stimulated TG less than 2, indeterminate response whether you have equivocal scan findings or you have thyroglobulin relatively high up to 10, biochemically incomplete response. Do the thyroglobulin is elevated, it is declining. If it is biochemically incomplete, declining thyroglobulin, you go for observation. If it is rising thyroglobulin, you do CT scan or PET scan. Structurally incomplete, you are detecting a disease on ultrasound or a scan or a clinical examination or both scan, clinical examination, and thyroglobulin, the location of the disease, rate of progression, and radioiodine, you have multiple options. If you have an excellent response, the TSH goal, that is, you supplement 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 microgram per kg per individual, and your TSH target should be 0.5 to 2. An indeterminate response, if it is structurally incomplete response, you should give more and more high doses of thyroxine so that the TSH is undetectable. The TSH is a known stimulator of thyroid cancer. So sometimes you give 200 micrograms thyroxine, but still the patient's TSH is not what do you say? It is not good. So they're unable to attain TSH target less than 0.1 in the patient of high risk. This boy is confused. The professor says, first rule out atrophic gastritis, then rule out brands. Some rule out change in brands. Some brands may give at a smaller dose. Some may, and another thing is check compliance. Most patients don't take properly. Most patients, the problem with thyroid cancer compared to other is compliance. In thyroid cancer, patients continuously daily need to take thyroxine tablets, which they don't like, especially in villages. Once they start feeling well, they stop taking tablets. Not only in villages, in cities and older people also, this is the thing. And celiac disease prevents absorption. Drugs, if you are giving concomitant administration of calcium and iron with thyroxine early in the morning can cause low levels of T4. And enzyme inducers like P450, those metabolizing thyroid hormone enzymes should be ruled out. And fed state, thyroxine should be always taken in unfed state. Check patient is if some patients take regularly, but they take after the food. That is a problem. And giardiasis and H. pylori infection also prevent absorption of thyroxine. So all these, so you should know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and those conditions which require thyroxine to be increased or those conditions which have to be treated, and you should give properly fasting, 1 hour interval between the tablet and food, and see that they are compliant, then you can attain target TSH. Sometimes we want to do a stimulated uh, thyroglobulin. The patient TSH is not rising even after withdrawal, hormone withdrawal. Actually, there are two ways of stimulation. One is recombinant TSH, other is endogenous. You stop thyroxine for 4 weeks, the TSH, negative, as there is no T3, T4, the TSH continuously is secreted. And when the TSH rises more than 30, that is the time for evaluation of stimulated thyroglobulin, antithyroglobulin, and doing a whole body iodine scan. Most of the time, if the thyroid TSH is very high, then because if they are using RAA, then there will be something called as radioimmunoassay. There is high dose effect. Too much of TSH will block all the binding sites, and that's why apparently TSH will be low. Repeat the TSH with dilutions, then you will know whether it is really elevated or not. Significant residue or metastatic thyroid burden. If you have a lot of residue thyroid cancer, it is producing hormone, and then your TSH will not be elevated. At that time, you do a scan and see if there is a lot of residue, iodine scan or ultrasound, and if there is a lot of residue, then you can directly go for therapy if it is iodine effect. Sometimes we have seen cases where the too much of uh, functioning metastases are producing thyrotoxicosis also. We have published. And patient non-compliant, they will be taking medications of other drugs. And the last is pituitary function. You evaluate from A to D, that is high dose of effect, significant residue, patient non-compliant, and pituitary hyperfunction. Then it is easy. Otherwise, if you start evaluating from pituitary hyperfunction, patient will lose lot of money and time. I already spoke. The poorer the FDG. Last class I spoke. The poorer the differentiation, the higher the HIF, that is hypoxia inducible factor, and the higher the HIF, the higher the FDG uptake. Poorly differentiated thyroid cancers, the FDG uptake will be high and iodine uptake will be low. Tennis patient confirm elevated TG, ruled out false scan, give one empirical, and advise imaging localized. If it is localized, then resect. If it is non-localized, metastatic. These are the multiple options for thyroglobulin elevated negative iodine scan. Already I said Kraft technique, that is confirm elevated TG, rule out false negative thyroid iodine scan by giving one empirical dose. After ruling out iodine content in whatever they are taking, advise imaging, check resectability, and then treat with TKIs. Treatment options for tennis patients. I already said resection, radiotherapy, redifferentiation, lutetium dotatate, chemotherapy, tyrosine kinase inhibitors. So this is about sorafenib trial, lenvatinib, which I have already spoken for those metastatic iodine refractory thyroid cancer. Sorafenib and lenvatinib are the options, and selumetinib can be used for redifferentiation. And the newer drug apatinib in radioiodine refractory thyroid cancer. This I have covered in the last class. So I am rushing from those. And one other thing, those radiation oncology people will not be knowing is parathyroid gland. In the parathyroid, why I am talking about parathyroid is most of them, any nodule comes with them, they present with chronic pancreatitis or especially not chronic, more than acute on chronic pancreatitis, recurrent acute pancreatitis, bone pains. They present with swelling. Sometimes they come to the oncologist, and if you see you do FNAC, it comes as parathyroid adenoma, so you don't know what to do. You do a ultrasound neck, you rule out multiple endocrine neoplasia, then you do a systemic scan, and maybe scan localizes, not only localizes but also helps in guiding therapy. And you should check PTH with calcium. Checking calcium without PTH and interpreting it is a very wrong thing, because PTH can be elevated in hypocalcemia also. Vitamin D deficiency also PTH can be elevated. False negative systemic scan when you have a four gland hyperplasia or small size, too many oxyphil cells, and expression of permeability glycoprotein. Now I am open to questions. Like chat.
Hello. Hello.
Like chat. Able to hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
it was interrupted. Now it's
Are you? Hello.
yes, sir. But
Are you asking how many days of hospitalization? The yes. Are you able to hear me?
yes, sir. Now
I did not.
audible.
Hello. Are you?
Before you were not audible just for 1 minute. Now you are audible.
Okay. You can ask all your questions. Let us keep it a more interactive. How many days of hospitalization? It depends on dose and the radiation exposure. See, what is the concept is the patient should not be the source of radiation to the environment, other normal people, especially pregnant and children. So we do hospitalize them till their radiation exposure at 1 meter distance is in the acceptable limits. That is 2.5 to 5 mr per hour is acceptable at 1 meter distance, milliroentgen per hour. So, the first question: how many days? Suppose the patient is having renal failure. If you give 50 millicurie only for one patient, it will be cleared through the kidneys. But for that patient who have a renal failure, if you are giving 50 millicurie, that will not be cleared through the kidneys. So that patient both patients are given 50 millicurie only. One needs few days isolation, 1 day isolation only. The other needs 2 days isolation. Another thing, you have given 200 millicurie to two patients. One is having single skeletal lesion. So the retention of iodine is only around 40, only 30% of iodine what you gave are retained. Another is having disseminated metastasis. So 200 millicurie is retained in the body. For them to become ready, for them to stop emitting radiation to the acceptable limit takes a week. For those with single lesion, only 48 hours is enough. How is radioiodine densitometry? Not densitometry, it is radioiodine dosimetry. Densitometry is for bone mineral. Radioiodine dosimetry is calculated based on a iodine 131 uptake scan. And we calculate what is the amount and what is the retention index. Based on that, we calculate. It is a slightly complicated procedure, but what we are in India we are following is empirical. Those calculated based on the amount of by dosimetry, amount of iodine it is concentrating, and Pimbi Marinelli formula will be there. That Pimbi Marinelli formula percentage of uptake and amount of retention and expected amount of mass, and then based on that we calculate iodine how much is required for the patient. That is based on there are three things: medical internal radiation dosimetry and other methods are there for calculation. It's I think this forum I cannot explain you all this. It is continuous 1 hour lecture. If you want, I'll take next. The dosimetry is based on MIRD methods, other phantom based methods, and all those things based on how much the tissue is getting, how much the surrounding organs are getting. All these have to be taken into consideration. But at present, we are using empirical doses. If it is a high risk, 100 millicurie. If it is localized and non-metastatic, high risk 100 millicurie. If it is localized and low risk, or we are not, we shouldn't treat. But in India, what is happening is we don't have the proper third mutation. We don't get in all this histopathological examination, and we don't get what do you say? We don't get third mutation. We don't get completeness of surgery. We don't know proper details. Some people in established centers at low risk we are not doing. If you have a proper histopathology report and properly operated at low risk, no need of treating. Then intermediate risk, yes, and it depends on 30 to 100 millicurie from center to center. We give around 50 millicurie, and some centers give 100 millicurie. And if it is lung metastasis or lymph nodal metastasis, which is not completely excised, we give 150 metastasis. When we are treating, we see that at 48 hours, there should be not more than 80 millicurie should be retained. And for skeletal metastasis, we are treating 200 millicurie. So what is iodine administered? Iodine is administered orally. We can give intravenously, but there are no adequate data to say that intravenous iodine is much better than oral iodine. Iodine is administered orally, either through capsule form or liquid form. Please ask so that I can help you out. Any questions? Am I clear? Audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Any questions?
So I don't think there are any more questions. So,
you please post me those questions, Navneet, anytime. If they want, they can ask. Thyroid cancer, neuroendocrine tumors are interesting to me. I did not want to push you all the information I know about, because that is our bread and butter. So I try to curtail to what is needed for the oncologist.
sure, sir, sure. So if there are no more questions, are there any questions? So you can just post them here, or maybe later on the group or something. Okay. So thank you so much, sir. It was a wonderful lecture, and thank you so much. We look forward to your next sales, sir. Thank you so much.